I never thought it would come to this. She gave me her phone to prove she was loyal. The irony. I wasn't looking for proof until she handed it over. When I looked, I found everything I feared, and more. My name's Ethan. I'm 32 years old, living in the suburbs of Denver. I've never been the kind of guy to make a scene. I'm more of a quiet, calm person. You know, the kind of guy who'd rather sit in the corner of a room, sipping his drink, watching everyone else go wild. I mean, that doesn't mean I don't care. In fact, it's the opposite. I care a lot, maybe too much sometimes. I work as an architect. It's not glamorous, but I love it. There's something satisfying about creating spaces. Seeing your designs come to life and knowing they'll stand the test of time. I spend my days on drafting tables, doing site visits, and coordinating with contractors. It's demanding, but it leaves me with a sense of purpose. And then there was Sarah Dodd.
I met Sarah about 3 years ago at a mutual friend's birthday party.
She wasn't like anyone I'd ever met. She had this spark about her. She was bold, loud in the best way, with a laugh that could fill a room. Her smile was infectious, and she made you feel like you were the only person in the room. I was drawn to her instantly. It didn't hurt that she was beautiful, too tall, dark hair, bright eyes that always seemed to be looking for the next adventure. We hit it off right away, talked for hours that night, and by the end of the evening I was already planning our first date. Quickly fell into a rhythm-long dinners at cozy Italian restaurants, walks through downtown, weekend hikes. We even adopted a rescue dog together, a golden retriever named Max. I'll never forget that first day we brought him home. Sarah insisted on taking a picture with Max, sitting between us on the couch, the three of us looking like this perfect little family. It's how it felt, perfect. At first, everything was easy. We had all the same habits. We'd binge-watch Netflix shows on lazy Sunday afternoons, sip coffee in the morning while listening to the same old playlist, and cook dinner together. There were even those quiet moments, like when we'd lay in bed after a long day, talking about the little things, plans for the future, silly dreams, the things that seemed so insignificant at the time, but looking back were the moments I cherished the most. But over time, things started to change, just little things at first. Her phone became this mysterious object. She'd never leave it lying around anymore, always taking it with her to the bathroom, or even leaving the room. When a text came in, I noticed that her laugh didn't sound quite as genuine. The way she'd touch my arm when she laughed had changed. It was more out of habit than affection. And she'd stopped playing our favorite songs in the car. Instead, she started listening to new music I'd never heard before. I didn't want to overthink it, but there was this nagging feeling in the back of my mind. Maybe it was nothing. It was just paranoid, but something about her energy felt off. Still, I ignored it for months. I told myself I was being irrational, but deep down, I knew I couldn't shake the feeling. It all came to a head one night. We were sitting on the couch watching TV. She was texting furiously on her phone, her face illuminated by the screen. I couldn't even see the words, but I could tell by the way she was smiling, flushed. A little too wide that it wasn't a conversation with me, and that was when I had the first gut instinct that something was wrong. I didn't know what it was, but I felt it deep in my gut. This wasn't the same Sarah. The next few weeks were a blur of confusion and unease. Sarah's behavior became harder to ignore. I'd come home from work and she'd be on the couch, glued to her phone, her attention split between whatever was on the screen and whatever was happening in the room. The worst part was that she didn't seem to notice, or worse, she didn't care. It wasn't that she was rude, but I felt invisible, like I was no longer part of her world. And then the subtle changes started piling up. It was like watching the slow unraveling of something you couldn't quite hold together. She began getting calls at strange hours. Sometimes it was late at night, and other times it was during dinner, when we'd usually talk about our day. She'd tell me it was nothing, just work, or a friend, or a quick check-in with a colleague. But I noticed the way her tone shifted when she picked up the phone quick. Hushed whispers, always stepping into another room. I never got to hear the full conversation. Her phone was always on silent now, an odd contrast to the days when she'd leave it on the kitchen counter with the volume cranked up. I found myself watching her as she sent quick texts, typing with one hand, while the other seemed to be holding the phone in a way that suggested she was trying to hide something. It didn't take long for my mind to start spiraling. I tried to convince myself I was overthinking it. But then, a random night changed everything. I was lying in bed next to her, unable to sleep, when I saw the glow of her phone light up across the room. She hadn't been acting right all evening, distracted. A little colder than usual, so I did something I never thought I'd do. I checked her phone. I didn't go in all guns blazing. I told myself it was just to check if she'd received an important message or maybe had a work email she forgot to mention. Unlocked it. There they were, messages from someone I didn't recognize. Flirty, intimate texts. The kind you don't send to someone unless there's something more going on. My heart sank. It wasn't just one or two messages. It was a whole thread, and it went back for weeks. The person, whoever they were, had a nickname for her, one she'd never used around me. Their conversations were full of inside jokes, laughter, and promises to see each other soon. I felt my hands shake as I scrolled through the messages. She had been hiding this from me for weeks, maybe even months. I should have felt angry, betrayed, but mostly I felt numb. The worst part was realizing I had known for so long and I'd been blind to it. But now I had proof. And that was the moment everything changed. When she woke up the next morning, I didn't say anything. I kept quiet, letting the silence stretch between us. But I couldn't look at her the same way anymore. Every glance I gave her felt like a lie. My mind raced with thoughts of what to do next. Should I confront her? Should I keep it to myself and walk away? But I couldn't ignore it. I couldn't be that guy. And so I decided to confront her. Later that night, she came home from a long day at work, looking tired but not in the way she usually did. She seemed ... guarded. When she went to kiss me, I pulled back. Her face tightened for a second, but she didn't say anything. I knew she could feel the shift too, and then I dropped the bomb. "I know about the texts," I said, my voice cold. Steady. Her eyes widened, but she didn't say anything right away. She just stared at me like I'd caught her in some kind of trap. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. "You want to tell me who he is, Sarah?" I asked, my voice tight. She finally spoke, but the words were laced with frustration. "Defensive? You're just being insecure. There's nothing going on. I told you that. It's just a friend from work. You're making this bigger than it is." But I knew better. I wasn't insecure. I wasn't imagining things. Just a friend. I echoed. "You don't whisper on the phone to just a friend." She fell silent again, her eyes darting to the floor. She knew I was right. But instead of owning up to it, she turned the tables. "Why are you always so suspicious? It's like you don't trust me at all," she said, her voice shaking now. "You're not the person I thought you were." I tried to keep my composure, but inside my heart was pounding. She had the nerve to call me paranoid, to gaslight me into thinking I was the problem. But this time, I wasn't going to let her. Control the narrative. I stood up and walked to the door, not saying a word. I grabbed my jacket, ready to go for a walk, to clear my head. But as I reached for the handle, I turned around. One last thought pressing on me. "I'm not the one who's been hiding something," I said, and I left without another word. The night air felt colder than usual as I walked around the block. Trying to process what had just happened, I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt so out of control, so powerless. Everything felt surreal, like I was living someone else's life. I didn't want to believe it. Wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she wasn't cheating. Maybe I was just overreacting, being dramatic, like she said. But the messages, the calls, the way she was acting, it was all there. I had the proof, but I wasn't ready to confront her just yet. I needed to be smart about this. I needed to collect more evidence. More than just texts. I needed everything: tales, timestamps, proof that this wasn't just a one-off mistake. I had to see how deep the betrayal ran. For the next few days, I played it cool. I went to work, acted like everything was normal, but in my head, I was spiraling. I spent hours on my phone, reading and rereading those messages. Every time I saw the words "I miss you" or "can't wait to see you again," it felt like a punch to the gut. But it also fueled me. I wasn't going to just sit back and let this happen. I knew I had to bide my time. I wasn't about to confront her head-on without knowing exactly who I was dealing with. That's when I started paying closer attention. To her phone, when she'd leave it unattended, when she'd slip away for a quick call, I made sure to jot down times what I had seen. Anything I could use. It wasn't long before I found myself logging into her account's email, social media, even her work chat. I know it sounds invasive, but I felt justified. I was trying to understand. Was this just a harmless flirtation, or was it a full-blown affair? What I uncovered next made my blood run cold. There in her email inbox were several exchange threads with the same guy. He wasn't just some friend from work. He was someone she'd been seeing outside of work hours, someone she'd been texting for months. And not only that, he was in the same city as us, lived just a few blocks away. I could only imagine how many times they'd crossed paths. How many times she'd lied to me and said she was working late, but it wasn't until I found the pictures that I felt my stomach drop. One of them was a selfie Sarah, smiling, standing with her arms wrapped around him, her cheek pressed to his. In the background, I recognized the park bench we'd sat on just a few weeks ago, the place we'd always go after our Sunday morning coffee. She had taken that picture with him, not me. I felt like a stranger in my own life. My whole world had been turned upside down, and here I was, looking at my own girlfriend, someone I thought I knew inside and out, smiling with another man. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the image of them together, that smile that wasn't for me. I knew what I had to do next. But I wasn't going to let my emotions control me. This wasn't about rage. This wasn't about throwing punches. I was going to make this hurt the way it hurt me quietly. Intelligently, I started planning my next move. I gathered the evidence, screenshots of the messages, the photos, the emails. Everything. I didn't want to just confront her. I wanted her to see the consequences of her actions, to feel the weight of the lies she had been living. But what really sealed it for me was when I decided how I'd end this. I wasn't going to do it alone. No, this needed to be something bigger. I knew where he lived. His name was Tyler, the guy she'd been hiding. So I took everything I had, and I made a plan. I was going to confront them both together at his apartment. She had no idea what was coming. The day came faster than I expected. I spent the morning preparing myself, collecting my thoughts, making sure I had everything in place. I knew she was going to try to talk her way out of it. She'd say anything to convince me that I was wrong. But this time, there was no turning back. When she walked into the living room, I could tell something was different. She seemed nervous, avoiding eye contact, as if she already knew something was up. But I was calm to calm. "Sarah," I said, standing in the middle of the room, my voice low but firm, "I've got all the proof I need, and I'm done." Her eyes widened as she looked at me. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words died in her throat. She knew what was coming. I reached into my bag and pulled out the phone. Showing her the screenshots, the messages, the pictures, I let her read every single one. The silence in the room was deafening, but I wasn't done. "I'm not going to do this here," I said. "We're going to his place right now." I could see the panic rising in her eyes as she stood frozen.
Odd.
But I didn't give her a chance to protest. I grabbed my coat, and we both headed out the door. The car ride to Tyler's place was quiet. Sarah was sitting in the passenger seat, her hands gripping her phone so tightly that her knuckles were white. I could feel the tension between us, thick and suffocating. She tried to speak, tried to apologize, but each time I just raised my hand and kept my eyes on the road. I couldn't bring myself to look at her. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I had loved, had been lying to me, had been sleeping with someone else. And now she was asking me to listen to her excuses? We arrived at Tyler's apartment building, and I parked the car. There was a moment of hesitation in the air, a split second where I considered backing out. No, but I knew I couldn't. I had to see this through for my own sanity. For the closure I needed, I stepped out of the car and walked to the building, with Sarah trailing behind me. I could feel her presence, her attempt to reach for my arm, but I pulled away, not wanting to be touched. I didn't want anything from her anymore. We walked up to the door of Tyler's apartment, and I knocked once, firm and steady. I wasn't angry, not yet, but I was determined. The door opened after a few moments, and there he stood, Tyler. He looked at me for a second as if trying to figure out who I was, but then his face fell. He must have recognized me. It didn't take long for the realization to hit him. I was the guy he had been sneaking around behind. I didn't say anything at first. I just let the silence speak for itself. And then I held up my phone, showing him the messages, the pictures, everything. The same thing I had shown Sarah. "You're going to listen now," I said quietly, my voice calm. "I'm not here to yell. I'm here to make this clear." Sarah was standing behind me, her face pale, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and guilt. I could tell she was trying to speak, but Tyler put his hand on her arm, holding her back. "No, don't," she said softly, but it was too late. The truth was already out. Tyler glanced between the two of us, his face a mix of shame and anger. He opened his mouth to say something, but I cut him off. "I'm not here for a fight," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I'm here because I need you both to know the consequences of your actions." Sarah turned to me, her voice breaking. "Ethan, I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen." I raised my hand again. I couldn't listen to her apologies. They were hollow, meaningless now. "I'm done, Sarah," I said, turning away from her. "We're done. You'll never see me again." I turned to walk away, leaving her and Tyler standing there, speechless. But as I walked down the hallway toward the stairs, I heard her call out to me. "Ethan, please," she shouted. "Please don't do this." But I didn't look back. I kept walking, taking the stairs two at a time, my heart pounding in my chest. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I had done what I needed to do. I had taken control back. The aftermath was a blur. Over the next few weeks, I moved out of the apartment we had shared. I packed up my things, taking only what I truly needed. The house that had once felt like home now felt like a prison, a constant reminder of what had happened. I didn't talk to Sarah after that night. She sent me texts, calls, emails, etched, one more desperate than the last. She apologized, begged for forgiveness, but it was too late. I had already made up my mind. There was no going back. It wasn't just the betrayal that hurt. It was the way she had lied to my face, the way she had manipulated me into thinking everything was fine, the way she'd made me feel like I was the problem. I sought therapy, trying to work through the pain and confusion. I needed to understand why I'd ignored the signs for so long, why I'd let it go on as long as I did. But through it all, one thing became clear to me. I was stronger than I had given myself credit for. As the weeks passed, I began to rebuild. I found new routines, new hobbies, new ways to fill the empty space. I started focusing on myself, on healing, on learning from the past, and on moving forward. It wasn't easy. There were days when I wanted to text her back, when I wanted to reach out and ask if there was a chance to fix things. But deep down, I knew it was better to leave it behind. And then, one day, I ran into Tyler again. It wasn't planned. I was walking into a coffee shop when I saw him sitting at a table by the window. For a moment, I considered turning around and leaving, but I decided to face him. I walked up to his table, and he looked up in surprise. "I'm not here to fight," I said, sitting down across from him. "I wanted you to know something." He raised an eyebrow but said nothing. "You don't have to apologize," I said, staring at him. "But I've learned something through all this. The best revenge is never needing her apology." Tyler didn't respond. He just nodded, and I stood up and walked away. I didn't need closure from him. I didn't need anything from Sarah. Either I was done. It's strange how life works out sometimes. You spend years thinking you know someone, believing in them, trusting them, thinking you've built something solid, only for it to crumble in an instant. It's even stranger to realize that what you thought was solid was never real to begin with. The foundation was always cracked, and I was too blind to see it. Now, months later, I'm sitting in a new apartment, staring out the window at the city skyline. The city I thought I knew, the city I had built a life with her in. It all feels different now, though. The lights seem dimmer. The streets are quieter. But strangely, the weight of it all isn't crushing me anymore. I've learned a lot in these past few months about myself, about trust, about what happens when you ignore your instincts. I've learned that you can't control other people's actions. You can't stop them from making mistakes, from hurting you, from betraying you. But you can control how you respond. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm healed or that I'm fine, because I'm not. I still wake up some mornings with a pit in my stomach, remembering her laugh, the way she'd say my name like it meant something. And there are days when I still want to pick up the phone and call her, when I wish things had turned out differently. But I also know this: I'm stronger than I was before. I've learned to trust myself more than I trust anyone else. I've learned that I don't need someone to define my worth. I've learned that sometimes the most important thing is not to seek revenge, but to seek peace, real peace, the kind. That doesn't come from hurting others, but from letting go of the things that no longer serve you. She got the house, got my peace. I've moved on from her, from the lies, from the endless cycles of doubt and hurt. And while I'll never forget what happened, I've decided not to let it define me. As I sit here, looking out at the horizon, I realize that the person I am now, the person I've become, is someone I can live with. I don't need her approval. I don't need anyone's approval. I'm enough, and that, I think, is the most important thing I've learned from all of this. If you enjoyed my story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more real-life stories like this.